Till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome to the Saturday Selection on GB News. Coming up this morning,
Partygate rumbles on with the Prime Minister and the Chancellor receiving fines this week. We ask if the Prime Minister can or should survive, with senior Tory MP Peter Bone and political commentator Dan Hodges.
80s music legend John Parr, most famous for this song. St. Elmo's Fire tells us what he would do if he ruled the world.
Plus, it wouldn't be Easter weekend without an Easter egg. Look what I've got you, Phil. Stay tuned for that and more. But first, here's the latest news.
Good morning, it's 1 minute past 10. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. The Home Secretary says other countries, including Denmark, could follow the UK's Rwanda asylum plan. Priti Patel made the comment despite reports of a civil service backlash over the reforms. There have also been warnings from the United Nations Refugee Agency that the plans are in breach of international law. Dr. Greg Mills, a former strategic advisor to the president of Rwanda, says it's the wrong decision.
Well, I think it's a highly transactional response to the refugee crisis in the UK, and essentially you're putting the responsibility on another country. It has an appalling human rights record. It ranks with 22 points out of 100, for instance, on Freedom House's index on political freedoms, which puts it in about the same space as Russia, for instance.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says around 3,000 of his troops have been killed since the beginning of Russia's invasion. That's as further explosions have been heard throughout the capital Kyiv and the western city Lviv, and also in the southern city of Mariupol. Efforts are underway to evacuate Ukrainian civilians through 9 humanitarian corridors today. The mayor of Trotskyansk says authorities are investigating mass graves in the Sumy area.
We don't have exact information, but a lot of people are missing. Right now, we're trying to find out if they are imprisoned or dead. We are finding mass graves, and it's not clear who dug them. An exhumation will take place. At the moment, there are at least 50 dead. Some of them were just shot on the street. Some were found with tied hands, eyes taped. We found people in villages shot in the head.
US government sources claim there were casualties in the sinking of a Russian warship in the Black Sea. The Moskva sank after Ukrainian forces claimed to have hit it with missiles on Wednesday. The Kremlin has denied this, instead blaming stormy seas and an ammunition explosion on board. The US says it believes the ship was hit by 2 Ukrainian missiles and Russian troops were killed, although they added that the numbers were unclear. Health officials are warning people not to eat Kinder chocolate linked to a salmonella outbreak in Belgium. 70 people in the UK so far have been affected. An assessment released by the European Food Safety Authority says it matched the same salmonella strain taken from a factory last December. The UK Health Security Agency has issued the alert for Kinder Surprise. Kinder Mini Eggs and Kinder Choco Bons. 1 in 7 teachers have experienced sexism at work, with 59% of harassment coming from a pupil. The National Association of Schoolmasters Union of Women Teachers will debate the problem of so-called incel culture in schools at its annual conference in Birmingham later. The motion calls for the union to lobby government to make misogyny a hate crime and to provide better mental health support for boys in schools. The average price of a home by the sea has jumped by more than £22,000. A report from Halifax says that coastal property values have been boosted by a switch to home working during the pandemic. Last year's price increase means properties by the sea have soared by 50% over the past decade. And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex will make a televised address at the opening ceremony of the Invictus Games in the Netherlands later. It follows visits on Thursday to meet the Queen and the Prince of Wales in Windsor. Harry and Meghan's arrival at the Games marked the couple's first public appearance together in Europe since they quit as senior working royals more than 2 years ago. Royal commentator Ingrid Seward told GBNews it could be the first step in rebuilding their relationship with the royal family.
Whatever you might think of Harry and Meghan, we all rather hope so that the family will embrace them again. But I'm not sure about Prince William. I think that probably goes a bit deeper. And I know that Prince Charles is very hurt, but it's his son. It wasn't like we imagine a sort of long meeting. I would think it was an exchange of pleasantries, because that's the royal way, but with the undertone of mending bridges.
Well, this is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to the Saturday selection.
Welcome to the Saturday selection with me, Esther and Philip. Coming up on today's show,
80s music legend John Parr, most famous for the soundtrack to St Elmo's Fire, tells us what he would do if he ruled the world. I love hearing that song. Can't hear it often enough.
and you may have heard about the online safety bill, which starts going through Parliament next week. It will allow tough criminal sanctions for tech bosses who expose their users to harmful content. But what impact will that have on free speech? Toby Young, who is editor-in-chief of The Daily Skeptic, joins us to discuss that.
Plus, it wouldn't be the Easter weekend without an Easter egg. Funny that you got me one, Esther. I've got you one exactly the same look.
Cheers, Phil. So let's get our first Saturday selection of stories with this week's reviewer, broadcaster, former Perrier winner, co-founder of Stonewall and the author of The Power of Difference. That's Simon Fanshawe. So thank you for joining us today.
Morning. Happy Easter. Here's my egg.
We'll have to get it. We'd have to get it written up straight away. We forgot about that.
Straight away. We've got another session at 11, so I think that's time to do it.
We will. We'll have it done.
So what caught your eye this week, Simon?
Well, one story was there's a story in the Mirror because they wrote the original story. Do you remember the bloke? He got called Canoe Man because he disappeared and faked his own death. And then it turned out he was living in a bedsit round the corner from his wife, who had kind of been, I think to some extent against her will, lured into this plot. Anyway, they claimed on the insurance, and then they went abroad, and then eventually they were snapped in South America. Anyway, the point is that they both went to prison, and because they were frauds. But Chris Lang has written a drama about it, which will be very jolly. But one thing that really struck me about this is Anne, she's now 70, okay? And there was just a paragraph written by this guy, David Lee, who was the person who originally wrote the story. She, that's Anne, has quietly rebuilt her life, having won the forgiveness of her two sons who once disowned her. John is now living in the Philippines with his new, much younger wife. Surprise, surprise. I mean, when will abusive men not just be discarded by all of us? I mean, at what point are we going to say, look, boys, could you just stop behaving like this? It would be a good idea. Stop pushing your wives and girlfriends and doing things they don't want to do.
But he was cruel to everybody and his two sons. I mean, he pretended to them for all of their lives that he was dead, though he'd sneak in and out when they weren't around. They could never really film. I mean, there's a lot in this. I mean, you wouldn't believe it happened unless it had actually happened. It is most bizarre
It has
story.
to be a film, doesn't it? It has to be a film. It has to be a film. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up, could you? Really? I mean,
but what strikes me about this is that she's done the work. I mean, I'm just reading from this story, but from what you can make out, she and her sons have done the work. They've kind of worked through this catastrophic thing that happened to them as a family, divided, and they've managed to get their son's visitor in prison, and now she's got grandchildren. He, on the other hand, is now freeloading, out in wherever. And you just think, why it's awful being a man, Phil. Don't you sometimes think?
I can agree with that, Simon.
One moment you think, oh, this is my tribe. I'm going to be Iron John. I'm going to hug trees. Next minute you look at them and you think, oh, blimey, this is my tribe.
Well, I don't think he belongs to any tribe. He's a strange, unique, one-off geezer.
The other thing too, he's called, I think inappropriately, his surname is actually Darwin, and you think actually he's pretty far down. He's pretty far down the food chain, to be blunt.
I don't know whether they're cooperating with the film. Talking of people,
she is, by the way.
Oh, she is.
She is. Apparently.
Okay. Well, talking of people who've been to prison. The story that caught my eye this week was some research that had been done by the Labour Party, and it was in the Times, and it was about the murders by former prisoners are rising. And over the last decade, it's quite extraordinary, this, I think, 685 ex-offenders have been convicted for subsequent murders. And there were 251 between 2018 and 2020. I found this quite a absolutely staggering figure. Now, I think it's a great piece of analysis by the Labour Party to have done this. However, I do part company with the Labour Party in their analysis of it, because they say that the reason for this is because the number of probation officers has gone down, and they say that there's been the number leaving has increased by 50% since 2019. But I don't think the solution to this problem is more probation officers. I have a feeling you might disagree with me about this, Simon, but I'm going to go with it anyway. But
it's all right, Simon. We both might disagree. Well, don't you worry.
There's two things, I think. The first is that actually one of the problems is that we've got this regime where prisoners are automatically released halfway through the prison sentence, whether or not they're still judged to be a danger to society. It seems to me that scrapping that law would be a good place to start if we don't want these people to go out and commit further serious offenders. I think I'd sooner that.
Yeah, but the other sentence, and I think people want honesty in sentencing. If you think somebody's been sentenced for an amount of time, they should stay there.
But the other thing about this...
What were you going to say?
Well, what I was going to say was just that the difficult thing about this is that prison has got to perform two functions, hasn't it? It's got to perform the function of punishment, but it's also got to perform the function for the rest of us of stopping people reoffending. So what you're
which
doing
it isn't doing, yeah.
Which it isn't doing. So, and the problem with serving the whole of the sentence is that if there's no incentive, the great thing about getting out early is that it's an incentive. So I think your point is right, which is that the key thing is to be judged whether or not. Now, you can't predict, the people who are likely to commit murders, I would think, are people who have already committed murders. I don't know, am I being a bit naive?
Well, no, you're not, Simon. This is a very good point. The thing is, there's no incentive for people to behave in prison because they're automatically released halfway through the sentence, whether they behave in prison or not. So
that's agreeing with you.
So, yeah. Well, the thing is, you're absolutely right. And I think since about the 1960s, when the death penalty was abolished, 2 or 3 people every year are murdered by somebody who was convicted of murder and is then released and goes on to murder again.
You're talking to somebody who, absolutely does not believe in the death penalty, never have done. There's a wonderful nun called Sister Helen Prejean. I don't know if you remember a film called Dead Man Walking.
I did.
That's her life story.
Is that Susan Sarandon?
Yes.
Yes,
and
brilliant.
She wrote a book called Dead Man Walking. And she said something which I found profoundly moving. And suddenly I realised why I was against the death penalty. And she said, a person is not just the worst thing they ever did. Now, what that implies to me is that you have to believe in the potential goodness of people. Now, the Moors murderers, Ian Brady, never showed any remorse, never showed any ability to transform or change or whatever. So therefore, yes. And so I'm agreeing with you. Yes, keep them in for life. There's no evidence to suggest that the death penalty stops people killing people. But what you've got to do, surely, is improve the ability of prisons to reform people. I have been many years involved in something called the Forgiveness Project.
But do you think,
and that's an amazing storytelling project that actually works with prisoners to do that, and it's quite effective.
But do you think when people see these figures that people have committed murder, they've gone on to commit murder again, this debate will spring up again in the public's conscience and demand for how do we rehabilitate? Or do they stay in for life like they always should have done? Life means life.
Well, I don't think life should mean life. If you look at the people who have rehabilitated, the question is it getting worse, or is prison performing that function? That's the key thing. Look, people will murder. People will commit crimes. People will... It's like when there's child abuse and everybody goes, we must make sure this never happens again. It's just a stupid thing to say. It will happen again. People will murder again. Well, the question is, are we doing a better job at stopping them doing it than we did before?
Or keeping them in if they haven't rehabilitated?
I think we'd love to hear what the viewers think. GB Views.
Oh, we've started that debate.
Simon, what else caught your eye?
Well, this is such a daft story. Hilton Group, the hotel people, opened a hotel in the East End on the edge of Tower Hamlets, if you know London, so sort of Liverpool Street, sort of in that direction. And but they got some marketing agency in to design the bar, and they decided that what they'd do was, because Tower Hamlets in the East End has got this great tradition of anarchism and political activism, they decided to model the Freedom Bar on this publication, which was called the Freedom Press, which has been going for 130 years, first published in 1886. But they had cocktails at 14 quid, you know, bottles of champagne, £165. Apparently the menu was a mock-up of the Freedom Press and so on. But what made me laugh, I mean, by the way, they didn't have a Molotov cocktail. I thought, of all the cocktails, they should have... And I looked up Molotov. I didn't realise this. Just here's a little bit of... Here's your pub trivia quiz point for the day. Molotov, who was a great supporter of Stalin, the reason Molotov cocktails are called Molotov cocktails was that when they were bombing Finland, the Soviets were bombing Finland, Molotov claimed that the bombs were dropping food parcels. So the Finns sarcastically called them the Molotov breadbasket. And then that transferred to the bombs, and they sarcastically said, well, the Molotov cocktail is a drink with the food basket. And that's that's the origin of it. But the point about this thing is, it just struck me, you know, this idea of the sort of a rich hotel calling itself the anarchist bar. And it's like all those middle-class kids. I mean, I'm very middle-class, I accept that, but I never wore a Che Guevara T-shirt. And it's all those middle-class kids who wear the Che Guevara T-shirts and become the anarchists. You never met a working-class anarchist. You know? The only people you ever meet are those people who stand in the corner, a socialist worker, and then, oh, hello, would you like a paper? And,
yes, we all hate them.
to be fair, and for those of you watching who are on the far left, I would explain that I do know the difference between socialist worker and anarchism. Nonetheless, they fall broadly into that kind of nutty far left thing, which I've never really had a great deal of time for. But it did make me laugh. I thought it was absolutely classic.
Well, from cocktails that aren't value for money, I've got, I think, a very good value for money story. And this is, now you can rent clothes from M&S, Marks and Spencer. So you can borrow a dress, a jacket, jumpsuits, you know, for up to 30 days, and it starts at about £10 for 4 days. So I think that has value for money stamped all over it.
Didn't you used to always be able to do that? Because what you did was...
Well, I was going to come on...
Spencer's, you bought it, wore it, took it back with a receipt.
Well, you see, now we're getting to know a little bit more
about... both petty criminals,
yeah,
that's the truth.
But Esther keeps the labels in the clothes just in case she wants to take it back at some point.
I saw the price tag on the back of that jacket.
I think she's got Yorkshire blood in her somewhere.
By the way, Esther, I think you should spend a bit more.
This was a present. This was a present from Phil.
When he was a bit mean.
Yes, exactly.
I am from Yorkshire, Simon. I mean, I'm not lashing out.
You could revamp your wardrobe, and people are saying you could without financial or economic cost. And what I was going to say is exactly what you said there, Simon. This is nothing new. Back in the 1980s, I remember hiring a dress for a ball, and that was because it was fashionable, or it was at the time. It was low cost. I was probably only going to wear it once, and if you could see it, it was like a purple Baker-like sort of foil dress, typical 1980s.
Is that you?
That's me with a perm, 1980s. Yes. You can see why I did only want to wear it once, but that was a hired dress. I've hired them since. But
you look like you're in Baker foil. foil.
Yes, that's right, purple Bako foil. That was the 80s.
People pay for that, Simon.
You're fantastic. You've got the mermaid figure there, but my goodness me.
Anyway, now you can see why I only hired it so that I could take that back. But I did keep a photo, don't know why, incriminating evidence. But the business case, because they now say online shopping, which accounts for like 50% of shopping, it's like over 50% of people are returning to the shops, costing £7 billion a year. So this renting, which they think will then become worth about £2 billion in about 5 years' time, is going to be sort of a new way of doing things. And it is about recycling,
isn't it? I mean,
yes,
the idea of sensibly recycling. I mean, how much clothing have you got in your cupboard that you don't wear any longer? There's a lovely scheme in Brighton actually, which is called Bring One, Take One. And it's closed for people who are on the streets. And the idea is, and I did it the other day, somebody rang me up and said, so I took a couple of jackets. I got a mid-calf length black leather jacket. So that went, and it was great. You take it in and you hang it on this hanger in the street, and then you bring one, take one. Oh, that's a great idea.
Well, what they're looking to do with these renting clothes is to get into leasing. So you could say, and some high streets are already doing it for, say, like 80 quid a month, you can have unlimited clothes forever, and that's where they're going to go. So it will be lease rather than buying. So instead of going cheaper and cheaper at clothes that you throw away, it's going to be more expensive, but you can keep using them. Anyway, I think it's a winner.
Simon, thank you so much for joining us.
I'll see you later.
See you in M&S later. This week, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor were both issued with fixed penalty notices after they attended a birthday party held for Boris Johnson in Number 10 in June 2020.
But that might not be the end of the story, as the PM potentially may receive further fines for breaches of coronavirus laws.
This week also saw the resignation of Conservative Minister David Woolsworthy, who said he had no option other than to quit because of the scale, context and nature of COVID breaches in government, inconsistent with the rule of law.
So let's go to Wellingborough and speak to Conservative MP Peter Bone. So were the police wrong to issue Boris with a fixed penalty notice?
Well, I'm not going to criticise the police. They interpreted a ridiculous law. Many of us fought not to have these silly laws in lockdown. But you know, I understand that this sort of fixed notice of penalty is the same as like getting a parking ticket. Well, I'm afraid most people do get one of those in their lives.
Well, the difference is, Peter, that the Prime Minister was the one who imposed these laws on everybody and didn't just impose them on us. He told us it was absolutely vital for us all that we followed these draconian laws. Do you not think it's somehow different when the Prime Minister's found to break laws that he himself put in place, said were hugely important, and most people in the country followed at huge personal cost to themselves?
Yeah, but in the Prime Minister's case, this happened in a building that's his home. He didn't think he was breaking any. He didn't think he was going for a party. It clearly wasn't a party. Turned up in the Cabinet office and someone had a surprise birthday party. I mean, the person that should be even more miffed is the Chancellor. He turned up for a meeting and there was a birthday cake and he gets slapped with a fine. I mean, I just don't think it is a great matter of concern. What is a matter of concern is the war in Europe, ending the small boats crossings, dealing with COVID. And of course, the Prime Minister's already got Brexit done. So I think people are behind, well, at least in my constituency, my emails are full of people supporting the Prime Minister, not opposing him, and actually supporting what's been announced this week, that we're going to send people who come here illegally to Rwanda, which is, I think, exactly the right thing, because it will end this terrible trade of people across the Channel by evil smuggling gangs.
Do you not think, though, Peter, I mean, you say it's not, you don't think it's that serious, but that's not what lots of emails I've been receiving from my constituents have been saying. They feel very let down, they feel very annoyed. Do you not accept that the Prime Minister's lost an awful lot of trust from people over this incident, and that trust once lost is very difficult, if impossible, to win back?
I don't think so. I mean, my inbox, Phil, has got a number of people who are complaining about the Prime Minister and the parties in Downing Street. But they're the same people that hated Boris from the beginning. They're the people who never supported him, didn't support, for instance, Brexit, don't like the Conservative Party. I'm not getting people, genuine constituents who don't have a political allegiance complaining. And I go out on the doorsteps and knock on doors, and people want the Prime Minister to get on with the issue. I just looked before I came on the programme, and the top email in there, support for the Prime Minister. So I really don't buy this. I mean, it's rather like playing football, isn't it? If you can't play the ball because you're not good enough, the other side's better at it, you attack the player. And I think that's what the opposition is doing. And it rather... If you ask me, has the Prime Minister got it right on Brexit, on COVID and the vaccinations? Has he got it right on small boats crossing? Has he led Europe's response to the war in Europe? I think everyone would say yes. And that's what they want in a Prime Minister. They want strong leadership. I just think he's done a tremendously good job. And he's had a whole set of problems that no other Prime Minister has had to face one after another.
What about if there's more fixed penalty notices that are given to the Prime Minister over the next few weeks because he was found to have broken the rules on other occasions too? What if the local election results suggest that the public look more harshly upon what's happened than you seem to think, Peter? Do you think if either of those two things happen that the Prime Minister's position would become untenable?
No, in the first case with the fixed penalty notice, well, if there are any, we have to look at the situation. But I absolutely accept the Prime Minister's view that he didn't realise that he was breaking the law. I mean, they certainly, nothing that I have heard of what the party that the Prime Minister attended could in any way be considered a party. I mean, it seems to me the Prime Minister was right to think that they were work meetings. As for local government elections, well, I think we did very, very well last time these elections are fought. I hope we don't lose any seats, but I expect we will, because that's what happens to a government in mid-term. I don't think you can draw any conclusions. I remember Mr. Blair losing lots of local government elections mid-term and then going on to having a whopping great win at the general election. So I don't think that's any guide to the future.
Peter Bone, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. And, Peter's raised some important and interesting points, as did you. People are writing in to us saying, we don't agree, this behaviour's, terrible. Other people are writing in saying, now isn't the time. They're looking at the time. It isn't time to change your Prime Minister. Look what's going on. But I think there's a philosophical question there. Tory MPs are renowned for getting rid of their leaders if they want to straight away. We do it better than any other party. But is there a philosophical question going on with MPs? Are they saying this is a problem in the past, this is something he's done, but who do we think will be a great leader for the future? Is that why they're having difficulties? Is it also because we're on recess and we want to gather and speak together? I think people are genuinely thinking, yes, maybe he'll have to go. It's like a Damocles sword over the Prime Minister's head, but now isn't the right time. So it's still there. He certainly isn't out of trouble, but maybe not just yet. What do you think of the...
Well, I'd be interested to hear what the viewers think. Let us know, GBViews at gbnews.uk. The point that Esther made, do you think that the Prime Minister should be judged solely on his misdemeanours with Partygate, and that if you think that was unacceptable, that he should be forced out? Or do you think that actually what's more important is looking to the future, and if he is, and people still think he might be the person to take the country in the right direction, that you should stick with him irrespective of his misdemeanours? It's an interesting quandary for people. It'd be very interesting to hear what people think.
And people are saying we want Ukraine and cost of living. If anything, they're judging you more on the cost of living.
Yeah, I mean, I think the timing is about the Ukraine's a red herring. We're not at war, and I think that's a bit of a red herring. Say you should get rid of him or say you shouldn't get rid of him, but I don't think the timing's relevant.
OK, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex speak at the Invictus Games opening ceremony.
Their arrival to the Games marks their first public appearance together in Europe since quitting as senior working royals in 2020.
The couple visited the Queen on their way to the Games earlier this week. And joining us now is the royal commentator and author Phil Dampier. Hello, Phil.
Good morning, Esther. Good morning, Phil.
So, I'm following this, and it is like a soap opera in all of the newspapers. They're going to the Invictus Games. They stopped off to see the Queen. How do you view this? Is this positive, them going to the Invictus Games, or is this really just cashing in on their Netflix series?
Well, the coverage this morning, Esther, is overwhelmingly positive in the papers about the Invictus Games. And I think that's absolutely right. I mean, the Invictus Games is something which Harry can be rightly proud of. It's been postponed for the last 2 years because of the pandemic, and so they've all been champing at the bit to get this competition going again. And you won't hear a word said against them amongst the competitors and the families out in The Hague this week. So I think that's a great success. Meghan's probably staying till about Monday. She looks sensational in a white Valentino suit. I don't know much about it. It looks a bit baggy to me, to be honest, but... what do I know about these things? And bedecked with various jewels, and they looked fantastic, and they got a really warm welcome. Having said all that, I think it's a little bit too early to say that the family rift has been healed, despite the meeting with the Queen and Prince Charles the other day. I think it's a little bit too early to say that.
Phil, I just wondered, lots of people were saying, you know, if Harry and Meghan can get to the Invictus Games and pop in to see the Queen en route, why were they not able to make it to Prince Philip's memorial service? And I think lots of people
Well, I think this is a big question. He was claiming that he didn't get Scotland Yard security. He's actually got an ongoing legal battle with the Home Office trying to get security. So if he couldn't come to Prince Philip's memorial service, why was he able to pop in the other day? It doesn't really make sense. The other thing, of course, is they haven't brought Archie and Lilibet. The Queen's yet to meet Lilibet, her great-granddaughter. So if they were trying to heal the rift, why not bring the kids? It would have been an ideal opportunity, I think.
Were they trying to say, we do want to come back to the royal family, June is a big time for the Queen, we will come then if we can be involved in those celebrations and we'll bring the grandchildren then? Was it a bargaining tool, the Queen's grandchildren?
It might be. I mean, cynics would, as I think you mentioned earlier, they are being followed around by Netflix film crews, so I think that might have something to do with it, and obviously that's good copy if you can meet the Queen. Whether the Netflix crew were allowed in to see the Queen or not, I know not, but that probably was a factor, and it does look good. But as I say, it's slightly too early to say that this rift has been healed. Prince William, of course, not around. I think the rift between the two brothers is still very bad. He's said to be on a skiing holiday. If you were going to really, heal the rift, I think William needs to be in on the talks, not just Charles and the Queen.
Yeah, a lot of people have made much out of the fact that William and Kate were out of the country when Harry decided to come and see the Queen. They didn't want to see each other. There's parts of the family rift that's going to take a lot longer, and that's with his brother and his father because of that Oprah Winfrey interview.
Well, William's always very nervous when he meets Harry because things tend to get leaked. And, of course, we've got this problem hovering over the whole family of this book that Harry's bringing out. No one knows what he's going to say later in the year, and that could open it all up again. So I think that's probably what's causing William to be extremely cautious at the moment. He doesn't want to sort of preempt anything and then find later on that whatever he said has been released to the press or has ended up in Harry's book.
Do you think, Phil, that we just read too much into things sometimes? That, you know, here we've got Harry and Meghan, they feel very strongly about the Invictus Games. Harry's always been involved in it, so clearly he wanted to go along to that. And given that he was over here, he wanted to pop in and see his grandma. And that, you know, that all seems perfectly normal to me, and that we love to read stuff into it.
A bit cynical. Yeah, it's Easter. The Queen is a very forgiving person, a very pragmatic person. I'm sure she wants to heal this rift. And I'm sure she's absolutely devastated by it, and I'm sure Prince Charles is devastated by it as well. But as I say, all the time this book is hovering over them. They don't know what's going to happen. And it does beg the question, if Harry and Meghan really wanted to heal the rift, could they not have brought the kids? Could she not make it up with her own father? She hasn't done that yet. He's only just down the road where they live in California. He's down the road from them, not far away. So you'd like to think that all of these family rifts could be healed if the goodwill was there. But I'm still not sure that there's still a lot of mistrust on all sides.
Well, Phil Dampier, thank you very much indeed for sharing your views on the matter. We'll all be absorbed. We'll all be reading it for the next days, weeks, and obviously, no doubt, years to come. And
I'm sure that Prince Andrew's aware that the Queen's a forgiving person as well as Harry is. Anyway, you may have heard about the online safety bill. It will allow tough criminal sanctions for tech bosses who expose their users to harmful content. But what impact will this have on free speech?
Toby Young, who is editor-in-chief of the Daily Sceptic, joins us to discuss that. Don't go away.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to the Saturday selection.
We've got some of your views here. Ian says, at the end of the day, the country has bigger problems to think about than the Prime Minister being in a room with his colleagues for 10 minutes.
And Den says, far from letting criminals out early as an incentive, the incentive should be behave yourself or your sentence will be extended indefinitely.
And Simon says, whilst I don't think Boris did anything particularly wrong and shouldn't have faced police action against him, I wish he had never gone along with these silly rules in the first place. They were always ineffective and needlessly punitive. So, there we go.
The online safety bill has passed it has its second reading in the House of Commons next Tuesday, and it's turning out to be quite contentious.
It would give the broadcast regulator Ofcom powers to oversee the internet, fine companies or block access to sites that fail to comply with the new rules.
But there were concerns that it could undermine legitimate free speech.
Joining us to discuss this is the editor-in-chief of the Daily Sceptic, Toby Young. So, Toby.
Good morning.
We've got this new piece of legislation coming through the House. Which are the worst bits of it?
Well, I think the worst bit, Esther, is buried in the fine print. In the fine print, it says that the Secretary of State at the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, which at the moment, as you know, is Nadine Dorries, will have the power to list priority harms which social media platforms will be obliged to remove or risk being fined 10% of their annual global turnover. And in this list of priority harms, Nadine Dorries has already said that she's going to include what she calls legal but harmful content. So that is to say, stuff it's perfectly lawful to say offline, even on television, like we're talking now, will become prohibited online. And any internet company, any social media platform, any search engine company not removing content which is, quote, legal but harmful, according to this list of priority harms that's going to be drawn up by Nadine Dorries in the form of a statutory instrument, risks being fined 10% of their annual global turnover. And I'm very worried that that will effectively mean that platforms like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook will err on the side of caution. If there's content which is quite controversial, which is provoking complaints, they will remove it rather than risk being fined. They're already very censorious. People who, gender-critical feminists trying to contribute to the debate about trans rights versus sex-based women's rights, people who are critical of the official pandemic narrative already see their content being removed from these social media platforms. I think it's going to get much worse once this bill has been passed and once Nadine Dorries has said what legal but harmful content has to be removed, including misinformation and disinformation.
Thanks, sir. I mean, a couple of things that the bill's objectives are. The bill's objective is to increase user safety online, to preserve and enhance freedoms of speech, to improve law enforcement's ability to tackle illegal content, to improve the users' ability to keep themselves safe online, and to improve society's understanding of a harm landscape. This is the difficult bit, isn't it? It's legal but harmful.
I mean, what do you think, Toby? The government says, you're saying that this is going to undermine free speech. The government says in its policy objectives, the bill's there to preserve and enhance freedom of speech online. Are they having us over a barrel with that? Are they making that bit up?
Well, they're not making it up, Philip. The bill will, for the first time, place a duty on social media platforms and other online providers to, quote, have regard, unquote, for freedom of speech. And the problem with that is it doesn't go nearly far enough. The legal duty to have regard for something is the weakest of the legal duties. That is Gillingham in Football League terms. Rather than Man City, which is the legal duty the bill imposes on social media platforms to protect users from harm, including adult users. So, for instance, if J.K. Rowling was kicked off Twitter and she complained that her free speech was being breached, a Twitter executive could say, no, we thought about the free speech implications of kicking you off Twitter, and we entirely dismissed them. And in doing so, if they said that, they would be fully discharging their duty to have regard for free speech. That's how weak and meaningless the have regard duty is. So what the Free Speech Union, which I'm the General Secretary of, wants to do is to strengthen that free speech duty, to make it much, much stronger. So it's at least on a level footing. It's in the same league as the duty to protect adult users from legal but harmful content.
Are there not certain things where you would accept that the government should be clamping down on things that are legal but harmful? I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, Toby, but, maybe sites that talk about suicide and might be, encouraging people or talking to people about how people, can take their own lives and things like that. Is there not an argument for some kind of clamping down on sites which might talk about things like that?
Yes, there is. And I think, well, to be clear, I think it's welcome that the government wants social media companies, is going to force social media companies to do more to remove illegal content, particularly illegal content aimed at children. And one of the things the bill will do will be to make the kind of content you've just described, content encouraging adolescents to self-harm, illegal. So that won't be captured by anything that goes beyond that and ask social media companies to remove legal but harmful content. That kind of content will be rendered illegal by the bill, and I welcome that. The problem is that the bill is effectively giving this power to the Secretary of State at DCMS to define, we worry in rather a nebulous, open-ended way, content that is legal. So not the content you described, that would be made illegal, but content that is legal, but which the Secretary of State thinks is harmful. Now, you may think, well, Nadine Dorries is a conservative. She believes in free speech. This list of priority harms she produces in the form of a statutory instrument, secondary legislation, won't be too censorious. And that's as may be. But the problem is the bill creates that power for any Secretary of State. So if Chris Bryant, for instance, becomes her successor, if, God forbid, Keir Starmer wins the next general election with a thumping majority and makes Chris Bryant the Secretary of State at DCMS, or Dawn Butler, they will take advantage of this power in the bill to define vast swathes of speech we think should be protected and is legal. They will force social media companies to remove that speech.
Toby, I'm just really wondering who will end up the defender of free speech. So like you say, these big companies are all going to be concerned. They might have 10% of their global sort of annual takings, so they'll be censorious. They will straight away be preemptive in taking things out. They'll go, oh, this could be harmful, we'll take it out. So they are going to be selecting, you know, what is free speech. And then you see somebody like Elon Musk now coming into the Twitter sphere, you know, because he can pay for maybe taking over Twitter. He will be, I don't know, the defender, or he will be the vanguard of what is free speech. So will it be removed from governments altogether to just a couple of titans in Silicon Valley?
Well, I think the problem is, Esther, that much censorship on the big social media platforms, particularly Facebook, is carried out by AIs and algorithms, and not by human actors at all. And you know, do we really? If there is no if there is no strong obligation for the social media companies to preserve free speech, then I think it'll be these AIs and algorithms which do that job, because the social media companies won't have to worry about them being over-censorious and removing content which is controversial but not by any measure harmful. I think there's another argument here, Esther, which I think will resonate with you. Part of the rationale, the rhetoric behind this bill, when Sajid Javid unveiled the white paper which became this bill, he said the aim was to make Britain the safest place in the world to go online. And Nadine Dorries echoed that line, making Britain safer than anywhere else in the world to go online. What that effectively means is that's a nice way of saying it'll be a more regulated environment. If you want to set up an internet company in the UK, you'll face a thicket of red tape, which is thicker, harder to penetrate than anywhere else in the world. And, you know, it may be that the large social media companies will have no difficulty complying with the various legal duties in this new bill. But what about new startups? You know, it'll be really prohibitive, and it'll stifle innovation. It'll stifle new opportunities for internet companies in the UK, because it'll be the most heavily regulated environment in the world. How does that sit with the government's aim to make Britain, out of the EU, a less regulated place for people to do business? How are we going to become a centre of innovation and business opportunity globally if in this really important sector, where there is potential for massive growth, companies are more regulated here, have more red tape to deal with than anywhere else in the rest of the world? It's completely at odds with the government's vision of a kind of post-Brexit Britain, which is which creates opportunities for new companies that want to innovate.
Toby Young, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. In a moment, we'll take a look at 80s music legend John Parr, and he'll be telling us what he would do if he ruled the world.
Underneath the blazing sky, I'll be where the eagles flying higher and higher. Gonna be a man in motion, all I need is a pair of wheels. Take me where the future's lying, set down those fire. I can climb the
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, but to the point on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to the Saturday selection. Imagine you were granted the power to do anything you wanted. If you rule the world for the day, what law would you introduce and why?
Well, to tell us what he would do is the singer and songwriter, 1980s legend John Parr, and who could ever forget his iconic hit record? And I'm delighted to say that John joins us now. John, you'll have got some cracking royalties from GB News this morning. We've been playing.
You've played it twice. Thank you.
And I was bopping to it all along. It's just one of those songs that really inspires you, really lifts you up.
It is.
Yeah, it still does it.
It's one of my favourite 80s songs. Just how did it come about, John? You writing that song for the film?
A guy called David Foster, very famous record producer, had a hit in America and he loved it and said, would I come and work on the movie with him? And we started writing and I couldn't come up with the lyrics. And he showed me a video of a young guy in a wheelchair called Rick Hansen that was doing the Man in Motion tour in 1985, who's going to wheel around the world to raise money for spinal research. And I wrote the song about him and I carefully made it seem like it was for the movie. And he did it. 2 years, 2 months and 2 days. He wheeled around the world. Currently, we've raised $275 million for spinal research.
Good grief, that's amazing. When you wrote the song, this is a question I've always wanted to ask people who've written a massive hit record. As soon as you'd finished writing it, did you know this is going to be a hit record?
Well, I'll be candid. I remember I wrote it that night and sang it the next day. And I remember going into the bathroom and falling to my knees and giving thanks for what had been given. And I'm not kind of given to doing that. But it was like lightning in a bottle. It was just so charged. And I think that's why it lives on. It stands as fresh 30-odd years later.
Yeah, I mean, on first hearing, I would have thought, wow, that is a hit. I'm not a songwriter or anything, but to me, that absolutely is. And I think it is fired with something. So whether it was emotion, passion, whatever it was, you were fired up with it. What do you like most? Is it writing? Is it performing? Is it touring and adulation? What do you get your kicks out of the most?
I think the writing part of it. The next bit is the tough bit. It's like building the Lego house, creating the arrangement and everything. That can be painful. The writing is always very charged. Sometimes it's quick. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth. But the creativity is really where you get the spark. And, you're trying. Well, Keith Richards does this thing about where did he get the inspiration for all those Rolling Stones record? And he goes, he just puts the antenna up, and hopefully you're there when the signal comes.
Well, lots of people might not know how many films you've written the music scores for, lots and lots, and how many people you've toured with, Beach Boys, Bryan Adams, Bonnie Tyler, but my favourite is Tina Turner. Now, you must have a story about, to me, she's just one of the greatest ever, Tina Turner.
Yeah, I was with Tina for 40 shows at the Private Dancer Tour. I used to do my set and then I'd get changed. I'd wait for the lights to go down and then I'd go back out and watch the show. And she'd come out and she'd say, "Are you ready for me? Well, I'm ready for you." And boy, was she ready. She was electricity, you know, a wonderful lady. And I'm very, very, what can I say, motivated. That whole private dancer tour, I think, took over 100 days. And all she would do would be go to the show, go back to the hotel, and not leave the room until it was time to go to the show again. So she was totally dedicated to giving her all. And she was a mentor to me.
Oh, right. We always ask in this slot, if you rule the world, John, if you could rule the world, what law would you introduce and why?
I wrestled with this when I got the call, and I really wrestled long and hard. So I thought, all right, rather than think about it too much, I'll just talk from the heart. The first thing I would do is I'd step down. I'd abdicate. Not because I'm shirking responsibility. It's because on a kind of down note, I don't know what you tell your children when you see what's going on TV. I just don't know. You know, every rule, every tenet we teach our kids is being broken in Europe, in Ukraine. And I don't know how to answer my grandson when, if that was happening in a school playground, as small as that is, it would be indefensible. You know, just violence and inhumanity. So I would step up as Minister of Humanities, and I would introduce mentorship, and I would introduce simple tenets of an ordinary life, and try and introduce a we rather than a me community, where we take care of each other and we look after each other a little bit better than we're doing, a bit more understanding. There's a great many people out there of a certain age that have got so much to give, and they're kind of watching daytime television or cutting the privet hedge, and they have so much to give and interject back into our young people, and not just young people. I just think that that's what I would do. It's that thing of, when I was a young boy, there weren't many broken families. Now, we find, lots of, different mums, different dads, if they're lucky. And I do think if a child hasn't got a dad in the home, he'll find one on the street. And God willing, he finds a good one, but generally they don't. And I think that's part of our moral decline. So, I would be about, let's put our arms around each other. Let's get out of bed in the morning and do something good, because I promise you, it's very selfish. You'll feel better by doing good. It's joyous. It's a wonderful thing. And, teach your children well, because we're going to need it.
Lots of people will be writing in to say they want you to be Prime Minister after that. I can't let you go, though, without asking you one thing, that because obviously he died recently, and I know that Meatloaf asked you to write songs for him. What was it like working with Meatloaf?
He was my pal. He was my first break. My very first break. He took me to America. I lived with him and his family. His daughters were little girls then. And he told me I fit like an old shoe. And we were pals for 40 years. He was larger than life. He was very, very funny. He was blessed with a gift that, he just had that spark that was larger than he was, and I miss him. I miss him badly.
John, that's an amazing tribute, and he's not the only one who was amazingly gifted. You're amazingly gifted too, and I think not many people know that you live in a village full of famous people. There's obviously, it's a small village near Doncaster. There's obviously you live in there. There's also Roy Clark, who wrote Last of the Summer Wine and Open All Hours and Keeping Up Appearances, lives in your village too. And of course, the most famous of all is my mum, who writes the village column for the weekly newspaper. So I mean, it's really
in the water. It's in the water in our village. I tell you.
This will absolutely be one of an article.
This interview will be in next week's column for my mum, I reckon, in the local paper.
I'm going to have a cup of tea.
John, there's one other thing here. We don't know if it's true, but did you co-write? Is it The Best a Man Can Get? What was that advert?
Yes. Yeah, and I don't get free raises. I can't believe it. I wrote it 30 years ago I wrote it with Jake Holmes. Jake wrote some songs for Led Zeppelin in his time, but he also was a great jingle writer.
John Parr, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute privilege, and also to hear your song belting out on GB News has been a great pleasure for all of our viewers and listeners too. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you both so much. I'm so chuffed I did it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Coming up in the next hour, we'll look at the suggestions not to tax the under-25s in order to give them a chance without financial worries.
Don't go away.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome to the Saturday Selection on GB News. Coming up this morning,
how about the idea of giving the under-25s more of a fighting chance by excluding them from paying tax altogether? We'll explore that this hour, but keen to get your thoughts on this too, so email gbviews@gbnews.uk.
We'll have a full roundup of the weekend sport with Aidan McGee. Plus, we'll speak to the chairman of Macclesfield FC after his team reached the top of their division after overcoming liquidation.
Plus, it wouldn't be the Easter weekend without an Easter egg. Stay tuned for more, but first, let's get the latest news.
Good morning, it's 1 minute past 11. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. In breaking news, the Prime Minister, Foreign Secretary and Defence Secretary have been banned from entering Russia. The country's Foreign Ministry announced that Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and Ben Wallace are all barred, along with 10 other British government members and politicians. They say unprecedented hostile action by the British government, particularly sanctions against senior Russian officials, is the reason behind the move, with further names to be added later. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says around 3,000 of his troops have been killed since the beginning of Russia's invasion. That's as further explosions have been heard throughout the capital Kyiv and the western city Lviv, and also in the southern city of Mariupol. Efforts are underway to evacuate Ukrainian civilians through 9 humanitarian corridors today. The mayor of Trostyanet says authorities are investigating mass graves in the Sumy area.
We don't have exact information, but a lot of people are missing. Right now, we're trying to find out if they are imprisoned or dead. We are finding mass graves, and it's not clear who dug them. An exhumation will take place. At the moment, there are at least 50 dead. Some of them were just shot on the street. Some were found with tied hands, eyes taped. We found people in villages shot in the head.
The Home Secretary says other countries, including Denmark, could follow the UK's Rwanda asylum plan. Priti Patel made the comment despite reports of a civil service backlash over the reforms. There have also been warnings from the United Nations Refugee Agency that the plans are in breach of international law. Dr. Greg Mills, a former strategic advisor to the president of Rwanda, says the decision is concerning.
Well, I think it's a highly transactional response to the refugee crisis in the UK, and essentially you're putting the responsibility on another country. It has an appalling human rights record. It ranks with 22 points out of 100, for instance, on Freedom House's index on political freedoms, which puts it in about the same space as Russia, for instance.
Health officials are warning people not to eat Kinder chocolate linked to a salmonella outbreak in Belgium. 70 people in the UK so far have been affected. An assessment released by the European Food Safety Authority says it matched the same salmonella strain taken from a factory last December. The UK Health Security Agency has issued the alert for Kinder Surprise, Kinder Mini Eggs and Kinder Chocobons. 1 in 7 teachers have experienced sexism at work, with 59% of harassment coming from a pupil. The National Association of Schoolmasters, Union of Women Teachers, will debate the problem of so-called incel culture in schools at its annual conference in Birmingham. Chair for the Campaign for Real Education, Chris McGovern, told GBNews he thinks children need to be held more accountable.
If children cross a line, they know there has to be some sort of punishment, and if necessary, that should be exclusion. No, we can't throw boys onto the scrap heap because they're being misogynist. They've got to be looked after as well. But we do have to protect girls. We have to protect other groups in the school. So really, this is about leadership, and we should throw away some of these liberal ideas about, oh, we're always going to put the child first.
And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex will make a televised address at the opening ceremony of the Invictus Games in the Netherlands later today. It follows visits on Thursday to meet the Queen and the Prince of Wales in Windsor. Harry and Meghan's arrival at the Games marked the couple's first public appearance together in Europe since they quit as senior working royals more than 2 years ago. Royal commentator Ingrid Seward told GB News it could be the first step in rebuilding their relationship with the royal family.
I mean, whatever you might think of Harry and Meghan, we all rather hope so that the family will embrace them again. But I'm not sure about Prince William. I think that probably goes a bit deeper. And I know that Prince Charles is very hurt, but it's his son. It wasn't like we imagine a sort of long meeting. I would think it was an exchange of pleasantries, because that's the royal way, but with the undertone of mending bridges.
Well, this is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Esther and Philip and the Saturday selection.
Welcome to the Saturday selection with me, Esther, and Philip. Coming up this hour, how about the idea of giving the under-25s more of a fighting chance by excluding them from paying tax altogether? Well, we'll explore that later on. We're keen to get your thoughts on that, so do email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
We'll have a full roundup of weekend sport with Aidan McGee. Plus, we'll speak to the chairman of Macclesfield FC after his team reached the top of their division.
And the Kardashians are back, and our very own Hayley Palmer has had a sneak preview of their new series. She'll be here to dish the dash. Do you get that one, Phil?
I do, yeah, the dash, yeah, very good. Plus, it wouldn't be the Easter weekend without an Easter egg. Here's ours. More on that later in the show.
We still haven't got Simon's, have we? I'm sorry, we'll get one for you.
I'm leaving.
But to kick us off, we are rejoined by the broadcaster and former Perrier Award winner and co-founder of Stonewall, and also the author of Power of Difference. That's Simon Fanshawe. So, Simon, what have you seen in today's papers?
Well, it's all over, and you've had big coverage this morning, is this deal with Rwanda around asylum seekers and refugees. The thing that strikes me about this is that there are two questions, and people are confusing them. One is, should something or does something need to be done in order to deal with this enormous disruption worldwide, by the way, of populations moving in search of either safety or economic stability? And the second thing is whether this is the right thing to do. And it seems to me on the first case that clearly there is an issue. I mean, people are fleeing, terror, fear, torture, etc. Most of the people who come to this country or try to come to this country come from Iraq, Iran, Yemen, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and so on. Afghanistan. So, these are not by and large African migrants. They're people from war zones, and some, well, obviously Yemen and Somalia and Sudan are. But my point being is that actually, if you want to stop that, you've got to tackle it at root cause. I think the question on this is whether this is the right thing to do. It feels, the phrase your correspondent used was transactional. It feels opportunistic. I mean, Alexei Sayle described Priti Patel recently as a woman who would unplug a life support machine in order to charge her own phone. She has little humility, she has little compassion, and it feels to me that this is performative. If you look at the experience of Australia, it was costing $1.6 million per person when they tried this outsourcing. And it feels to me, it's like what rich people do with their tax, isn't it? They offshore it. This is offshoring the problem and trying to solve it by simply saying, you won't get it, as if this is a disincentive. If you're fleeing and trying to find a new life for you and your family, practically nothing is a disincentive. As people said about Trump's wall, you build the wall tall, the asylum seeker, the refugee, will find a ladder that's taller.
But the issue is, I guess, that these people that Priti Patel and the Prime Minister are trying to deal with aren't coming from Rwanda. They aren't coming from, Syria or Libya or some. Well, no, they're coming from France, and they're coming over.
They've ended up.
And they're coming from France, and they're coming over in dinghies across the Channel to risk their lives to get to the UK. And of course, I think what most people would say is that France is a perfectly safe country. They don't need to risk their lives to get over the Channel in a dinghy.
Well, yeah, but they've risked their lives. But Phil, come on. They've risked their lives coming from the country of origin where they're terrified.
The question is, why don't they, if they're genuine asylum seekers, because I think the suspicion is these are not genuine, they're illegal immigrants. If they're genuine asylum seekers, why don't they claim refuge in France, which is a perfectly safe country? That's
better than that. Better than that is, instead of investing this kind of money in this scheme to go to Rwanda, and we'll see if it works or not, but the front page of the Times today, Patel faces staff mutiny. The civil servants in the Home Office are saying, actually, this is loopy and it's not going to work. They have to do it where the permanent Undersecretary is saying, actually, the implication is the permanent Undersecretary is saying he doesn't or she doesn't think this is a good scheme. The point being is that if you want to stop this at root, what you do is you enable the embassies, the British embassies in the countries where there are these kind of fears, you enable people to apply for asylum there. You don't make them go through. If you want to cut off the market in people travellers, people traffickers, you stop the trafficking. That's from Syria to France. That's where the trafficking happens, okay? And then over the thing. Got to tackle it at root.
I'm just going to read a GB. I'm just going to read a GB.
Oh, go on. Because I was going to say, I think,
George.
but Simon was spot on when he was saying we need to do something. Nobody knows what, but is this a deterrent and is this a place to start? And could we use that money to build up another country?
I just want to read what George said. George said, "Do I hear that Priti Patel is facing opposition from civil servants? The civil service is there to follow the instructions of our elected representatives, not work night and day to frustrate them.
Well, that's fair enough, but frustrating is different from critically appraising. What you're asked to do as a civil servant is to make the thing work. And if what they're saying is this is not going to work or it's not value for money, then they're right to say to the minister, yes, you've got a great idea, but I'm sorry, Minister, it's a bit of a loopy idea. It's not going to happen.
But
Esther,
but also, I'll go to the next one. But
Yeah.
another thing in the papers, though, the public do seem to be backing it at the moment. They do. So in a way, civil servants need to say, these are democratically elected politicians. That's what the public wants.
Esther,
Let's make it work.
Yeah, 2 points there. My point is that, yes, the public is confusing. I think we're all confusing. Something needs to be done with what's being done. Actually, the proof of the pudding, to use the cliche, let's see if it works. It didn't work in Australia. The Israelis tried it. It didn't work in when they...
But let's see if it works this time.
Let's see if it works. But the point is, civil servants are quite right to say, actually, we're going to be critical of this because we don't think it can work.
That is their job. So, OK, my
it's
one
worth
here.
also saying, by the way...
Hang on, I've got to get on to the next.
All the people who applied from Rwanda for asylum in Britain were successful in Britain. What does that tell you about Rwanda?
Well, all I can say, the one thing I will say is that in 2019, the United Nations asked Rwanda to take refugees from Libya. So the United Nations obviously don't think Rwanda's that bad a country for people to seek refuge in. But anyway, we could talk...
how it compares to Shipley, Phil.
But how Britain has become anti-wealth. And I think this is an interesting story in The Telegraph today. It's a two-pager, sort of very much on the back of, you know, Rishi, the Chancellor, is too rich now to be either a Chancellor or a Prime Minister. How are we viewing that? But I think it's interesting. Have we become anti-wealth? Some of the richest people are saying things like, you know what, we don't want our name associated with our company. If people know it's us, we don't see it's a positive thing anymore, even though we could have pulled ourselves up from our bootstraps, done incredibly well. But there doesn't seem to be that either the government supporting us and maybe people's appreciation of the people who are the wealth creators seems to have disappeared. So the government's putting extra sort of taxes on people. Rishi might not be able to go on to higher things. I mean, there are other things that he's done. I'm not saying that, but just about his wealth there. But interesting to say, but where does this all come from? And I think that's the most important thing. Is it because, and they actually put it down to people not being able to get on the housing market, young people in a way feeling resentful that they don't have the chances of other people. So this anti-wealth is because they don't think they've got a route to wealth. So nothing wrong with wealth per se. It's just, well, how do I become a part of this world? And if I can't be a part of it, I am going to be resentful and not like it. But they put it down to housing.
Well, it's one of the great sadnesses of those people who believe in the market and in, if you like, liberal economics, whether that's from a right-wing perspective or a left-wing perspective, if I can use those things, is that the market, liberal economics, has not delivered for everybody in the way that it's supposed to do. And what's been obvious since the crash is that it's delivered to certain groups of people to a far greater degree. So people have got exponentially wealthier. So that's, I think, when young people, are, as you say, can't get in the housing market, they're spending huge amounts of money on private rented accommodation. So inevitably that produces a fracture. I don't think that's also the problem with Rishi Sunak. The question really, I think, is we're perfectly happy with certain people being rich.
Yes.
And so it always interesting. Film stars is an interesting one.
Yeah, film stars and footballers. It goes on to that in this article. But could Marcus Rashford become a chancellor, even though we were happy for this footballer to come up with policy ideas?
Don't you think it's because we see a direct relationship? We pay the gate, you know, we pay to get into the football match. We watch the football match. You see all the other people. You think, well, they earned that because you could see the money earned. Tom Cruise, you go to the movies, the cinema's full. Oh, he earned it. So you could see the connection. Whereas I think the problem for people whose wealth is involved in the kind of wealth, and also his wife is largely inherited wealth because it was her husband who built Infosys.
The dad.
Her dad who built it. You know, I think that's the point at which... And the other thing, too, which you made a real mistake. Let me ask you two.
Yeah.
What is the price of a loaf of bread?
Well, I want to come on to that, actually, Simon, just very quickly now, actually.
Oh, Phil.
You've teed me up well, because on page 29 of the Mirror, there's a story about how the English brekkie, I don't know if you like it, I love a full English breakfast, Simon, as you can probably tell from my waistline.
You've got that before.
And it says
It's
that
usually got there before anybody who's the full English.
The English brekkie is even more expensive, and it says that sausages have gone up 12%, bacon's gone up 20%, eggs have gone up 5.5%, beans have gone up 15%, and mushrooms are up 9%. The thing that troubles me about this story, though, is that that's all they've got in for the full English breakfast. There's no mention of black pudding, bread, a slice of fried bread. There's no hash browns or chips or anything like that. I mean, they've got here the breakfast, a fry up for 4, 1 sausage each, 1 tin of baked beans to share between 4. I mean, my God, I don't know who's cooking up that breakfast, but I don't want to go there for breakfast, to be perfectly honest. It looks like a...
You're an Oliver standing at the counter, aren't you?
It looks like a half portion to me, but the prices in the Mirror today about how everything's going through the roof, and bread is one of those.
There's 2 problems with breakfast, I think. One is that the quality of sausages...
Oh, yeah, now you're talking, Simon.
I travel around, I go to lots of hotels. The quality of sausages is frankly poor. That's number one. The other thing about breakfast which gets me, and this is a hotel experience, which is the only place I ever have a full English breakfast, is in a hotel. But there's always the very, very large bloke. And by the way, you're not large compared with the people I'm talking about.
Too kind,
and they're
Simon.
always heading over towards the help yourself to 3,000 eggs and a half ton of baked beans. And you always feel like saying to them, pop over to the muesli. Why don't you try that? Why don't give it?
Esther's always telling me to do that, to be perfectly honest. So I've heard that myself.
I say it, Simon. I say it. That's why he's slimmed down.
Well,
anyway,
well done you.
Simon, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
It's been great fun.
Now, we are all aware of the struggles of young people who are just starting out in life, trying to build a career and trying to get on the property ladder.
But what about the idea of giving the under-25s more of a fighting chance by excluding them from paying tax altogether?
To discuss this further, we're joined by Kieran Everson, who is the writer for The Mallard magazine, which is a magazine for people of all persuasions who are unimpressed with current political parties. He's also written a paper and whilst he's at university. So, Kieran, tell us about this. Why shouldn't under-25s pay tax?
Hi, hello. Yeah, so it sounds very blue sky thinking. It sounds very crazy, but I got the idea from, it was announced in Hungary recently that they're going to no income tax for under 25s as a way to stem a brain drain they have in Hungary as people are moving across Europe for better opportunities. And I saw it and I thought, this really applies here, because we would be silly to assume that we're not going to have a brain drain. At the moment, the average rent is now 15% higher than it was in early 2020, and it costs £2,193 average rent in London. That isn't sustainable. No one thinks that's sustainable. And if it continues like this, young people will move and we will have some kind of brain drain. So I thought Hungary's solution was very elegant and sleek and encourages ambition.
Kieran, I think I read somewhere, I don't know if it's true or not, that Marine Le Pen in France was suggesting that if she got elected, she'd abolish income tax for people under the age of 30. So clearly your idea here is catching on. I guess one of the questions that people might ask is, does this mean that everyone else is going to have to pay more tax in order to subsidise the under 25s or the under 30s in France?
No, I don't think so necessarily, because I think the economic growth that this could actually promote would be amazing. I think firstly, you've got the kind of opportunity costs where if you don't do this and people move, you're never going to get anything from them. But also by introducing people into the workforce, giving them an incentive to work hard, to get more on their CV, to get more experience by the time they're 25, they're going to be making more and they're going to be working more and you're going to get more taxes. But for the economic growth, stuff like planning reform, if things were tied onto this, if things did get better for young people, for the most productive people in the country, the whole economy would benefit. There's an essay called The Planning Theory of Everything by Sam Bowman, which covers this, how the entire British economy is held back by things like high housing prices. And if we just didn't have a planning system from 1947, maybe we would have real economic growth in this country and everyone would benefit.
You know, talking to your friends at university or wherever down at the pub and what have you, do you feel disenfranchised? Do you feel that resentful in a way because you don't feel you can achieve as much as generations gone before you?
Yeah, absolutely. And people who are politically disinterested, people with no interest in politics, think this. So you've got marginal tax is now 42% for graduates earning over 27k, which is crazy. And that's from the NI advice, and the NI advice was to pay for a cap on social care spending so that old people don't sell their homes. But then that's even less homes in the market. And politicians that supposedly stand for young people, like Corbyn did, called this a dementia tax. So, yeah, people I talk to, people my age, do not think they're ever going to get on the housing ladder and will be squeezed for, even though they earn the least, they get squeezed the most. And it just seems like taxation is a wealth transfer from young to old. So, yeah, even people with, I think, without party affiliation, I think this is cross-party, I think this is just everyone in the generation is agreeing on this, but no one's really listening.
Make a counter proposal to you, Kieran, because I am very interested in your idea. I just wondered whether or not if you took them out of tax altogether, they may have no incentive and low tax rates for generally because they wouldn't be paying any tax at all. And I wondered, therefore, to try and encourage them to care about the rate of tax that there is in the country, we could charge them half the rate of tax rather than abolishing it altogether, so that they still have an incentive to vote and for a party or to see governments have low rates of tax generally. What do you think? I've just thought about that off the cuff. What do you think of that as a counter proposal?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A proposal like this is incredibly ambitious, of course, and so just anything that can be done to lower that marginal rate is the real hard one on young people. So yeah, to meet in the middle, this is obviously a very ambitious one from Hungary. But yeah, just halving it, but it really needs to be paired with the planning reform, which was promised, but then watered down after the by-election defeat in Cheshire and Hampshire. If you tie all these things together and you stop treating young people badly, the entire economy will benefit. So yeah, I think that's a good counter.
Kieran Everson, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. And to be fair, I think he has got a good idea there. Yes, it needs to be refined and sorted out. But when he looks at, you've got a graduation tax, you're paying more in national insurance contributions, we can't get on the workplace. And that goes back to that article I was talking about before in the Telegraph. You know, have we fallen out with the wealthy? Do the young feel resentment? And they wouldn't if they saw an easier path to job and prosperity. So I think he's onto something. Anyway, coming up, all your weekend sporting action with the one and only Aidan McGee. Don't go away.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We're
would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GBNews, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Welcome back to the Saturday selection. We've got some GB views that have come in. Charles says, I supported Boris at the election and I had high hopes, but Partygate is going too far. I will not vote for him again. Whereas Marilyn says, the Labour Party and the left media insisted on draconian measures and were against the easing of restrictions, and now they're clamouring for his resignation for what amounts to a drink after work. I agree with everything Peter Bone has said. P.S. Excited to see John Parr. Please play St Elmo's Fire in full. Well, Marilyn, we didn't play it in full, but I think we gave it a pretty good go. To be
the chorus kept
I don't think we shortchanged people on hearing St Elmo's Fire.
Now, on Toby Young and the online safety bill, Alan says if it is legal, then that's it. Harm offence is something we have to deal with. Would Rayner's comments that all Tories are scum fit into that criteria? Would images from the Ukraine be deemed harmful? Dangerous to all, any individual or government to dictate what is legal but harmful. Would an opinion be harmful? So again, all that we were saying, what does this harmful mean? Alan's picking up on that. And Dawn says Toby Young is 100% correct on every point. The online harm bill will eventually be used by others who are in power and will be abused by others in power.
Thank you for your views. Macclesfield FC have been presented with the North West Counties Premier Division trophy. It follows a run of 10 consecutive league wins.
It's a fairy tale football story. After they went into liquidation, they were bought off Rightmove and then they went on to win the trophy.
I'm pleased to say we're joined by the chairman of Macclesfield FC, Rob Smethurst. Rob, congratulations on your achievement, but what on earth made you want to buy this football club in the first place? I mean, most people think it's a poisoned chalice buying a football club, as well as the road to bankruptcy. So what made you do this?
Exactly. I think crazy, isn't it? I mean, yeah, it was one of those mad moments. I think, you know, being a Macclesfield lad and seeing that you know, the football club went bankrupt. So yeah, I mean, who knows why I bought it? But I think, you know, I had great intentions. You know, to get the community spirit back in, the heartbeat back into Macclesfield. So, yeah, but it's. I do think that most days, to be fair, why did I buy a football club?
I have this vision, Rob, of you going down Rightmove, looking for a house to buy or something like that, and seeing, oh, there's a football club for sale here. I think, yeah, let's have a go at this.
Had you been drinking?
Well, okay, no comment on that one, but yeah, I think I'd been out on a few beers the night before, and you know, a couple of my mates said, you know, Macclesfield is on Rightmove, and I was like, nah, no way. And yeah, I saw it and thought, you know, I don't know what happened, and maybe too many drinks. And then, yeah, I bought it the following day, believe it or not.
And when I said it was a fairy tale story, I mean, it really is. Just explain some of the things. So you didn't have a team, you didn't have a football ground, it was all the grass had sort of overgrown, and there you are winning the trophy in, what was it, 535 days or something. So just tell us some of those key points along the way. How did you turn things round?
Yeah, so obviously, you know, after purchasing it, I came to the ground and, you know, it was in a real bad state. And at that point, you know, I needed some help. So, you know, I pulled the team together, got in touch with Robbie Savage, you know, persuaded him to come on board, which, you know, he kindly did. Yeah, and since then, you know, we've managed to build a brand new bar, we've built gyms, we've got nearly 500 kids now in the academy. We have about 1,000 children playing football here every single week. We employ about 85 staff. It's been an incredible journey. But like you said, we've had 9 months to try and get a team together, and that was the true challenge. We had nothing, and so to pull that around in such a short period of time with the help of obviously Robbie being massive, influential in making this happen for us, and he got really busy with it, and we managed to win it, which, to be fair, is a fairy tale story.
Rob, thank you so much for joining us. We congratulate you on a fantastic achievement, and no doubt you're an awful lot poorer for doing it, but you'll have made people in Macclesfield very happy, and we look forward to you rejoining the Football League proper in a few seasons' time, and we wish you every continued success. Thank you very much for joining us.
He looks super sporty there as well, doesn't he?
It's a great story, that, isn't it, Aidan?
Fantastic. Yeah, I knew them a little bit, actually. I used to live up in Wilmslow. I used to pop over there. It's one of the few grounds I hadn't been to, and so I knew the Towns family who were involved in the club. They were one of them was a groundsman. They had a historic association going back 50-odd years. And I think they were involved with the local furniture shop, Origi Bianchi, as well, who were like I didn't buy much stuff there. It was out of the price range, but it was...
But to turn that round, unbelievable. Obviously, he's put financial vigour and rigour in the place, hemorrhaging money per month. Now they've got it...
There's potential there, though, Sticks. It's a visit within the vicinity of some juggernaut football clubs, and I'm not just talking in British terms, I'm talking about in European terms, and so you can potentially get...
And we need to talk about them for the semi-final FA Cup.
We do, yeah. Well, look, big game today. We've got Liverpool against Manchester City. It's the fourth game for each side. They've got that run of 4 games. This is game 4 out of number 4 today. They've been involved in Champions League. They played each other in the league last week as well. I fancy Liverpool today, and I said that for the Carabao Cup final the other week, and I was correct. And as your dad will be pleased to know. But also, I think they got an advantage today because City had a bruising encounter in the week in Spain. They were knocked about left, right, and centre. They were on the receiving end of what we might call the dark arts, which in football terms means anything that isn't in the rules, anything that should be outlawed that isn't actually technically covered by the ruals. So they were pulled around. They were
legal but harmful, I think we've been describing it as earlier in the show.
Right. But you might know what harmful is in this instance.
Yeah, well, they had the players had their hair pulled. It was like, nothing short of a bit of eye gouging and stuff like that. But apparently it's all in a good spirit as long as it's not, no one gets killed.
And can any of the supporters turn up? Because obviously the trains aren't been running.
They are. I mean, we had some tweets in earlier on saying that there are people travelling down by car because there's no trains coming from Euston direct to Euston from either Liverpool or Manchester today. So the clubs have laid on coaches. The FA got a lot of criticism for this because Network Rail informed them months ago, that this would be the situation on Easter weekend. It's quite common for that.
Semi-final, it could have gone to a club ground up north.
Well, why couldn't it have gone to Old Trafford? Yeah. Didn't that make sense?
Exactly.
Not Liverpool or City like Old Trafford very much, but it's a sensible place to hold the game.
It's a neutral ground. Yes. I just wanted to say, Sean Dyche being sacked by the manager of Burnley after taking them up to the Premier League, keeping them in it and I mean that just goes to show the lack of loyalty in football.
Well, it does.
Talk about ingratitude.
They're trying to get a bounce towards the end of the season. It doesn't always work. Norwich tried this in 2014, didn't work. Hull City tried it in 2010, didn't work. I don't think it's going to win this time, and I don't think a lot of neutrals will want Burnley to stay up now.
And Joe Root no longer captain of the England cricket team, which as a Yorkshireman I am very sad about.
Yeah, I know.
We've heard that all morning, haven't we?
It's been chewing my ear off all morning.
Aidan, thank you very much indeed. Still to come on the Saturday selection, we'll be taking a look at all the weekend's showbiz. But first, here's the news headlines.
Just coming up to 11:35, I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister, Foreign Secretary and Defence Secretary have been banned from entering Russia. The country's Foreign Ministry announced that Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and Ben Wallace are all barred, along with 10 other British government members and politicians. They say hostile sanctions against senior Russian officials is the reason behind the move. President Zelensky says around 3,000 Ukrainian troops have been killed since the start of Russia's invasion. That's as further explosions have been heard throughout the capital Kyiv and the western city Lviv, and also in the southern city of Mariupol. Efforts are underway to evacuate Ukrainian civilians through 9 humanitarian corridors today. The Home Secretary says other countries, including Denmark, could follow the UK's Rwanda asylum plan. Priti Patel made the comment despite reports of a civil service backlash over the reforms. There's also been warnings from the United Nations Refugee Agency that the plans breach international law. And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex will make a televised address at the opening ceremony of the Invictus Games in the Netherlands later today. It follows visits on Thursday to meet the Queen and the Prince of Wales in Windsor. Harry and Meghan's arrival at the Games marked the couple's first public appearance together in Europe since they quit as senior working royals. On TV, online and on DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to the Saturday selection.
Welcome back to the Saturday selection. This weekend we can finally tuck into those Easter eggs, cakes and hot cross buns that we've seen on the supermarket shelves for weeks. But why is all this sweet food the things that we want for Easter? Alini Wickens, who is a pastry chef at the Pink Kitchen in Seven Oaks and has more than 14 years of experience in painstakingly baking these special treats, will explain. So hello, Alini, fantastic for you to join us with some of your wonderful...
This looks good.
Yeah.
I mean, we've just been discussing how fat I am earlier, Alini, and you right on cue bringing a load of these cakes. So what makes a good Easter egg, Alini?
What make a good
What-
Easter?
yeah,
Well, actually, I do a different style Easter egg.
Oh.
I do ones with filling in shells. So when you crack the shell, you have the filling like a truffle, or you have strawberries, you know. And also we have Easter egg is like a dessert pot, so you eat by a spoon. It's a different way to have your Easter egg.
I'm loving that, but I'm also loving the designs. You've got Easter bunny eggs on there.
Yes,
You've got
we have cupcakes, cake.
Yes. Can you bring them over here?
Yes,
Put them in front of me and Philip if you
They won't last long if they stay in front of us for...
Fantastic. I don't know if we can
look at those.
a look at those. They look magnificent. So, but why do we want sweet things at Easter time? What's it about?
It's a religion thing, you know. The egg symbolizes the fertility, yes, and the rebirth, Jesus. Yeah?
Yeah.
So, and the cross buns as well symbolize the cross when he was crucified.
Yeah.
And the spices inside the buns symbolize when he was dead, they put cinnamon, things like that, around him as well. So every single sweet has a meaning for Easter.
And I see that the Queen today has released her recipes, or maybe it's her pastry chef, have released the recipes for hot crossed buns.
Ooh,
so
nice.
you know, you've got tough competition there, Alini.
Yeah.
But you, how did you get into all of this?
Oh, my mom used to bake a lot, and I used to help her when I was a child. So in 2004, I decided to move to the UK and study chef courses. And I got my professional NVQs as a pastry chef and a chef.
And what's your favourite thing to do? Is it the cakes? Is it the Easter eggs?
Oh, we do a lot of things in the Pink Kitchen. We do celebration cakes, wedding cakes. So I love to make cakes.
We love to eat them.
Yeah. Great combination that is, Alini.
And the chocolate as well. So I hope everybody enjoy the sweets today.
Yeah, it strikes me though, isn't it? It's about, I understand what you're saying about the egg and and being religious, but it doesn't mean say it has to be made out of chocolate, does it? I mean, that's just self-indulgent, isn't it? So we're on a chocolate.
Oh no, hang on.
Why does it need to be a chocolate? Why does it need to be a chocolate?
Yeah, the chocolate one came from 18th century. In France, they started to make chocolate eggs and decorate them to gift the friends and family.
I see.
And look, you've got a box there. I want to know what's in the box.
I can show you.
Yeah, she's not letting you loose on the box.
This is the different style I said to you. So you do a half-shelf egg.
Yes.
Filling and eat by spoon.
I've got you.
So that's a
chocolate. So that's a sort of a pudding from egg.
Exactly.
Oh, I see. My word.
Your dessert is inside the egg.
Gosh.
Yes.
That's amazing, isn't it?
And these are, I mean, you know, obviously these are typical Easter treats, but obviously they're getting more and more advanced, and that's really advanced and convoluted. I mean, where do you keep up with your ideas? I guess it's a fashion for food, but where do you get your ideas from?
Actually, this type of Easter egg is very popular in Brazil.
Oh, right.
They call Easter egg eaten by the spoon. So I brought this idea to the UK, and I sell a lot of these ones. And also the shelf one, when you crack the shelf, you have the filling inside, is another idea.
Can I see that strawberry one? Because people just aren't going to get the beauty of these cakes.
We have a brownie, we have strawberries.
I'll take this one out.
Real strawberries
this is it. This is artwork here. This is crafted artwork.
Yeah, red velvet as well.
Well, look, it's certainly going to be a wonderful Easter for us. We've got our lunch and dinner sorted.
I'm not sure my children could be persuaded to get a spoon out and start delicately eating. They still get straight into it.
Exactly.
But it's worth trying.
Yeah.
But that looks beautiful, I've got to say. Amazing. Alini, thank you so much for joining us
and very much.
Bringing in these treats.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome every week.
Thank you so much.
Coming up, all your weekend showbiz with Hayley Palmer. We'll be back in a second.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to the Saturday selection. They couldn't get those cakes and chocolates away from us. They are remaining here. But who else has joined us? Hayley Palmer, our showbiz star of the show. So do you want to tell us what's been happening this week?
Well, I want to know about the Kardashians. Hayley, that's what I want.
You were there. I did see.
You get all the best invites, don't you?
I do. Yes, I went to the Kardashians preview, which is now on Disney+. And I haven't actually seen the Kardashians before, which people are quite surprised about. So I went along, I thought, I'm not going to like it. Weirdly, I've got sucked in. I don't know what's wrong with me. I was glued to the screen. I mean, just the insight to their lifestyles. It's a whole new world, honestly. And I just love seeing inside their fridges, their wardrobe. I mean, honestly, it just makes me want to go and live in one of those mansions. It really does.
What's so good about it?
Well, I think what is quite unique about it is that the exec producer came on and he said, you know, they are such a close family and family is first. They're very loyal and that comes across. But just their lifestyle.
But it is an industry, isn't it? It's I mean, it is a business. It is a family business, and they are going to be loyal. I mean, I don't know how many millions upon millions they've made, but it is a small fortune, and they're just selling stories of themselves. What they do.
Yeah, they really are. And
I think we can look at a trailer as well.
Yeah.
I say that, carry on talking.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about it instead. We're going to visualise this. But yes, I was just totally glued to it. And I think, you know, they love showing their wealth. but we love watching it as well. So I am now going to be sat in, unfortunately, tonight watching that, the second part of it, which is now out. It came out yesterday.
Now, talking about people who are about wealth, but people are going through their wealth, is Johnny Depp. And his court case, how much wealth is he going to be going through at the...
Wow, we've got another 5 weeks left of this, Phil. So it's just ups and downs, isn't it? But what I love most is that Johnny and Amber both turned up with the same Gucci tie. People are actually talking about what they're wearing, which is just crazy because it's more kind of like a drama than it is a court case.
No, it is like a soap opera, but it's like $100 million defamation case. You know, it's round 2 of what went on before. I don't know what they get out of this. Do they prove anything? Do they prove they're innocent? Or does it just go into more sort of degrading stories about the pair of them? I mean, what do they get out of this?
I don't know, but I have seen that both of their careers have been suffering because of it. Like we said last week, they have a jury deciding, not just a judge. So it'll be interesting to see what the result is. Yes, we have another 5 weeks of that, so I'm sure I'll be reporting more on that one.
You know, like most people don't want to get jury service. I bet everybody was, I'll do it, we're there.
But it's going to be, it is like a soap opera though, isn't it? It's going to be like a soap opera, that one.
Yeah, it's an absolute drama. There's ups and downs. It's a bit like a circus, but I have been following it, and you can watch it. You know, they have the cameras in there, so you can actually watch it as well. So,
and in terms of celebrity couples, J-Lo and Ben Affleck.
The other end of the spectrum.
The other end.
The start of the relationship rather than the end.
The pre-court case.
Well, listen to this. They went out with each other in 2002. They split up in 2004. They got back together last year. Now she's got a beautiful green diamond ring on her finger, which I'm all about the ring. I'm obsessed with it. And they're moving in together. They're looking at a new house. So it's all romance for them.
Is this a second engagement?
Yes, because they were actually previously engaged back in 2000.
Just thinking about this financially as a Yorkshireman, is this a second ring then she's getting? Or have they
She's got the green diamond, Philip, honestly. Yeah.
I'm sure I read something was like $5 million or something.
Yeah, absolutely crazy.
You were shortchanged.
Certainly was. I certainly was, but I'm wondering if that's the real thing or if that's just a sort of a plaster cast model or whatever of the ring. But so she's got a second ring then? Yeah. She kept the previous one. She's got a second one. I think she should go for it.
You missed a trick there, didn't you?
Call it off and have another engagement.
You'd have had no chance.
But Britney Spears, we're going through all the relationships now, aren't we? Britney Spears is celebrating.
40 years old. Pregnant. She's already got 2 children previously, but she's living her life now. She's doing what she wants to do. She announced it on Instagram, and she said she'd be doing lots of yoga to keep calm throughout her pregnancy, and I'm sure we'll be seeing updates all over the gram.
And was it something about Pamela Anderson doing a debut on Broadway or something?
Yeah, she's in Chicago. She's playing Roxy Hart in Broadway. I did not see that one coming. I mean, obviously, we all know her from Baywatch.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure that she could sing or dance, but I've actually seen little clips on YouTube. She got such a good reception. Everyone was raving about her. So, yeah, there we go. Who knows in the world of showbiz, eh?
But she's had, you know, a difficult couple of years, hasn't she? She had that sort of separation from her father, who was controlling what she did. She actually said at the time, didn't she, that was her dad, didn't want her to have a child. He'd enforced all of these rules. This is Britney Spears. He'd enforced all these rules upon her. And she just said, I want to have my own life if I'm sort of mentally competent enough to earn all this money and to go out to work. I want to have my own life, my own, I don't know, husband, boyfriend and children. And this really has been sort of one of the changes and one of the things she wants to do.
Yeah, it's quite sad when you read all of her stories, actually, what's happened. And I think that is why the public are so behind her. If you read like her posts, you can see everyone's just delighted for her happiness. So I think she has been through a really rough trot. So, yeah, we're pleased for her.
Well, I mean, I don't. I mean, is a dad out of her life altogether now, or
yeah, I'm not quite sure if he is or he isn't, but I know.
It's quite bitter, was it?
Yeah,
it's quite a bitter case.
Yeah, it really was, and I know, like I say, she's been through such a rough time, but now I think she's doing things on her terms. So this is just the start of it, and I know she's got a very supportive husband. So I think good things are coming her way.
Going back to Pamela Anderson, I thought it was amazing that she was doing that it was a debut on. But I mean, I don't know how old Pamela Anderson is, but she's. We don't want to get into ladies' ages. But it seems quite a strange thing to do, sort of this stage of a career. Should we put it like that?
I mean, it was almost a quarter of a decade that she was on Baywatch. Obviously, there was that documentary about her that came out. But yes, it did seem a bit of a bizarre choice to have her on Broadway, but obviously that's what she wanted. I saw her in an interview with her afterwards when she'd come off stage, and she just said, I absolutely loved it. I want to get back on stage. I want to do it again and again. So.
And it seems to be a good role that other people have taken on before, and it has made their name yet again. If somebody wants to be reinvented, it seems to be a good role to do if you can do it.
Yes. I mean, I can't sing. I can just about dance, but I can't sing at all. But, respect to, the stars that can go on and do it, because I think it's a lot of hard work as well.
I think made her career when she wanted to come back. That was a role to play. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is a tough one. You've got to be super duper fit. You have got to be able to sing. But I've seen some people come back through that performance. It's a ballsy kind of.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I do believe Gemma Collins is going into Chicago as well. There has been rumours about that. So. Watch this space on that one. But yeah, I think it's a hard schedule. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of West End stars, and 2 shows a day on a Thursday and a Saturday, and doing that same thing every day. I think you've got to be pretty tough to get through it.
And I need to ask you this after last week, Hayley. Have you let us down? Have you been to see Phantom of the Opera or not? Have you?
Philip, I didn't manage to see it. I'm so sorry, but it is on my to-do list. I promise.
She was hanging out with the Kardashians.
Yes,
what can
exactly.
I say?
It's been a busy week.
Better offers. That's what it is. Honestly, you've got to go and see Phantom of the. I don't want to hear you next time. So
okay, I promise. This time next week, I will report back.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we'll see you next week, and you certainly can. Now we've got some more GB views there to get through. Lots of people have been emailing us in, whether it was about the Boris story, whether it's about this new online safety bill. What have you got, Phil?
Sue says we should not forget that when Boris was in hospital with COVID, his family could not visit him. In the worst-case scenario, he could have died alone, the same as anyone else in the country. I agree with Peter Bone about this, and I do not think that Boris was in the wrong. I did not vote for him to be leader, but I do not think this should be a resigning incident.
It certainly is, and lots of other people are coming back with that. They say, to say that anyone saying Partygate is a problem is only being said by people who did not like Boris is ridiculous. So this is other people saying they did not agree with what he's done. Got people either side of the argument, some saying he needs to go, others saying they don't see an alternative.
Well, Keith says World War III about to kick off and Her Majesty's opposition is still wittering on about a birthday cake. And talking about cakes, no surprise to see you, Aidan, wandering in for a free...
I'm so nosy. I just went out there, I saw it on the screen, it was sweet.
You saw all the cakes.
Nosy, otherwise known as greedy. I think people
possibly.
could call it. What have you got your eye on?
Pretty much all of it, actually. I'm perfectly honest with you. No, it's fantastic. I mean, I like the... is it a white chocolate one here?
Well, what are you doing for Easter? You'll be watching, obviously, Glued to the Set with the football.
I'm actually type 1 diabetic, so I can't go. I have to go easy.
Are you?
Stuff. So yeah, but it's a treat for me.
Type 1? What's all this about?
I've had type 1 diabetes for about 15 years now. But it just means I have to restrict my number. Control it. So chocolate can be useful for a hypo to get you out of trouble sometimes, but you also have to limit. You can't have too much, otherwise you push yourself too high and cause yourself in trouble. Theresa May has type 1 diabetes. Yes. She was diagnosed at 54, which is incredible when you think about it, and she ran the country for that. So I can do some sports bulletins with type 1 diabetes. But yeah, the presentation looks fantastic. I'm definitely going to have a try of one in a bit. But yeah, in answer to your question, all of it's catching my eye, if I'm honest.
Hayley, are you going to be gorging on Easter eggs?
I've already had 2 Easter eggs.
Oh my God.
I have no shame. And Easter's my time of year. I absolutely love it. I always make sure I put the rest of my Easter egg in the fridge. You can't leave it out. It has to go in that fridge.
I didn't know it would last that long. I thought once the Easter egg is cracked open...
I thought you were supposed to eat them till Sunday.
I make my own rules at Easter.
Yeah, but then when it's in the fridge, I think it just takes the taste away somewhat, don't you?
No, I like chocolate in the fridge.
Yeah,
I
get the proper.
I prefer. That's an intro. I like it gooey as well.
Oh, do you?
I don't like it tough, hard and brittle. I like it gooey.
I think
there you go.
What tastes like a bar of soap or something.
Well, look, what can I tell you? The conversation of GB News. How do you like your chocolate, gooey or solid and put in the fridge? I don't know if Alistair Stewart will be talking about things like that. hard news like that. But look, it's great that you could join us this week. We will see you next week at the same time. Next is Alistair Stewart and Friends, so don't go away.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking cloudy, misty and murky at first in the west, dry and bright elsewhere. Let's take a look at the details. Southwest England will start the day with low cloud, mist, fog and possibly some drizzle at times, although this will tend to turn back to the coasts through the morning. In contrast, the southeast of England will start the day dry and bright with plenty of sunshine on offer for all. Wales will also have a rather cloudy start, particularly near the coast where patchy mist, fog or drizzle is possible, drier and brighter inland. In the Midlands, cloud will also bring hill fog and the odd spot of rain over the higher ground to the north of the central belt, but there will also be some sunny spells. It'll be rather cloudy in the northwest and northeast of England too. It'll also brighten up though through the morning. Scotland will see similar conditions to the rest of the country, with temperatures reaching 16 degrees by midday. Northern Ireland will also have a cloudy, misty and rather murky start to the day, especially near eastern coasts. However, it will steadily brighten up here through the morning. And that's your forecast for your Easter Saturday.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.